Welcome to Heard and Understood, a podcast from Lipscomb University's Institute for Conflict Management. Here you'll learn to recognize the signs of conflict, understand its roots, and find better ways to move through it. In each episode, Professor Elizabeth McMillan sits down with leaders and mediation experts to unpack everyday conflicts and what they teach us about understanding others.
So I'm Elizabeth McMillan, and I work at Lipscomb's Institute for Conflict Management, and I am here today with our Dean of the College of Leadership and Public Service, Dean Steve Joyner. And so I'm glad to have a chance to talk with you a little bit and learn some of the history of this program from you. So our program has been around a little over 20 years. We offer a master's in conflict management as well as training for Rule 31 mediators here in Tennessee. And so I wanted to just, first of all, start with the real basics. What would you say is conflict management? And I think we hear lots of different terms like conflict resolution, dispute resolution.
ADR.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably hear that as much as any question I run into. Why is it called what it's called, and why is it there a common name for it? Well, I think it's interesting. It has to do with the fact that conflict management comes from so many different sources. So many different groups are trying to manage difficulty in so many different ways. There's not an easy way to describe all of it. So ADR, alternative dispute resolution, that comes from the legal field, right? So does conflict resolution. And it has its roots in contractual contracts where there is a moment where you sit down and you figure out an answer and you move forward. So an alternative dispute resolution. Rather than go to court, we sit down in a room and we figure out an answer. Conflict resolution fits that. For those of us in the non-legal field, you rarely resolve the conflict completely. You just make it more manageable. So the word conflict management became in vogue, or things along that line. So it really comes from like what you're trying to accomplish. And at Lipscomb, we chose conflict management because we're not primarily a law school or the legal field. We're teaching people how to manage the difficulties that come along and how to make it better. So a little hesitant to call it resolution because that indicates one answer. If that makes any sense to you.
That makes sense. And we, as I'm sure you know, everybody is experiencing some kind of conflict in their life, in their work, in their personal life.
I had one on the phone while I was coming up here.
When you think about conflict management and teaching it, what does that look like? How, I was talking to a lady the other day and she said, well, that's just common sense. I don't need a PhD to do that. But I do think there are some things
I think both are right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting to teach it because it does draw so many fields. Number one, I'll go with her thing is, it's just common sense. Yeah, some of it is, but apparently people don't have any common sense, right? Because so there is some of that stuff at lower levels that we run into at what Speed Lees calls level 1 and 2, that good people skills, intuitively enough, your parents may have taught you some of those skills in life that it comes off as common sense. But when it escalates to a certain point, those skills sometimes actually get in the way of doing what you need to do. So what you would intuitively think you should do works in some instances. And I want to affirm that. And I often tell people a lot of what you run into with a few basic principles, you're fine. If it escalates past a certain point, there's actually specific steps and tools and philosophies you need that may run counter to common sense to help. So I would agree and disagree with her, right? And then each area, like I teach in organizational conflict, that has some overarching principles that are true for everybody, but that has very specific kind of skills that you would need separate from, say, mediation, if that makes any sense.
Yep. And I wanted to talk with you a little bit about how you personally came into this field, because it's a fairly new field when you think about it. It's not an economics or a philosophy.
Right.
People have only been studying this since the 80s, maybe.
Yeah,
70s.
really so the roots are in the 60s at the earliest, right? And so it just recently kind of been recognized as an academic field. I mean, academics are kind of snooty. I'm one of them. It takes them a while to decide something is real. I get that. So coming out, I definitely did not see myself entering a field of conflict management. I didn't know what it was. I started my career as a minister and realized at some point I didn't have really the tools to be really good at that. And that was rooted a lot in how people behaved, not my understanding of biblical text. And that's after I finished my doctorate, all the leadership stuff I had there still was lacking. And so as kind of a graduate postdoc certificate, I really started looking at this kind of emerging field of conflict management, primarily to give me tools to deal with the people I went to church. I tease sometimes that it always surprised me. Some of the worst behaved people I knew actually went to church with me. And I didn't know why that was. And so I began that way. But after gaining that, I began to do some training in churches. And one day, the CEO of a large supermarket chain said, "Hey, my managers need some of these skills. Would you train my managers?" I said, "I don't know anything about business." He said, "It's the same principles." So I moved into that, and then I began to realize there's tools, and so we started to integrate that and teach that. And I was dean of a college in Texas when Lipscomb had started this conflict management, and there's not a lot of us out there academically trained. So I was asked by the previous president if I would come and kind of work on the academic. I already had a director to kind of come and work on the academic side of the house to get it up and running, and kind of went from there. So not sure that I ever thought, hey, I think I'm going to go in the field of conflict management. I'll do consulting. All it wasn't really on my plan. It's just kind of what developed, but it's been really fun to learn and grow. And that's been 30 years ago.
Wow. And in addition to your work teaching and running our program at Lipscomb, you still do some consulting, right?
I do. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And never just consulting and things I never thought I would be talking to people about, from startup tech companies, mergers, acquisitions, hospitals, healthcare, NASA, all these different really interesting environments that, is a long way from being a youth minister in South Texas. But all of them have one thing in common. They have really smart people. It's really called complex adaptive conflict. So smart people with ill-defined roles trying to do complicated things, get in conflict, and that is very different than a dispute between two neighbors. Yeah. And that was the area I got interested in, is why do these kind of complex teams have such issues? And that's been kind of where my consulting has gone, has been in that area.
I think that's great that these companies have recognized the need and then sought out somebody with the expertise to help them.
Yeah,
really
rarely
important.
are they concerned all that much about the feelings of their employees. They're usually losing money. And it's kind of gone sideways, and they don't know how to fix it. That's you. We often joke, you've heard me say, people don't call us when the bus is in the ditch. It's the bus in the ditch, the bus is upside down, and the bus is on fire, and then they call somebody. But it usually is tied to the fact they're having production issues because of it, and they'll call for help.
That makes me want to talk a little bit more about your work in consulting. What other types of jobs can people use these skills? We're offering a master's in conflict management, and we have a lot of great academic classes in communication and forgiveness and reconciliation, organizational structures. With all of this as an academic background, what have some of our alumni gone on to do in their careers?
That's a great question. So there's not like, you're not going to go hang out a shingle and say conflict manager and people call you. That's rarely how that works, right? But there are specific ways over the 20 years we've seen people very successfully navigate, right? One is consulting. We've had students have gone out and established their own consulting firms in healthcare or in other organizational areas or in mediation, kind of run their business, right? So some people go out and do their thing. I will say generally those people have a period of expertise within a field. They've been in the workforce for a while, and they take their experience and then apply these principles into a consulting firm, right?
Yeah.
A 24-year-old says to me, I want to open a consultancy in conflict management. I'll say, okay, just be prepared to do another job because people are going to ask you. Second is there's still the legal side. So we have people gone through who do mediation. That's primarily what they do, both civil and family, and we provide all those tools.
And mediation, as you're talking about it, is within that legal system.
Right.
So
Court appointed,
folks.
or you've been asked to mediate. I mean, and you don't necessarily have to be an attorney. It helps. But I've done mediations between universities. Why? Because I've been a college professor and dean forever, so I bring that expertise into that room. And I did one between two major universities. It, by the way, took 5 days, but it was a straight up mediation like we teach you how to do it here. There's that. The vast majority take what they're doing, take it back into their workplace and either expand their skill set to be more useful, take a different job, or move into a different role in business, right? Because and then a few do consulting in churches in different areas, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of that consultancy, advice, coaching, all that, mediation, or in some nonprofit corporate area using your skills to lead organizations. That seems to be where our people are dropping, if that makes any sense.
This is maybe a rarity, but we do have some alumni who've gone to other countries.
Oh yeah,
So, or taken these skills back to the country that,
from.
yeah.
You want to hear two funny stories with that?
Yes.
One is taught me never to judge a student. I had a student from a very small town in East Tennessee come in and says, I want to do this degree. And she sounded very East Tennessee, And I said, great, what do you want to do? I want to do international conflict management. I'm thinking, I want to win the lottery. And the gap from here to there looks pretty large. And I was like, okay, don't know that'll happen. Yeah, she's in China helping negotiate between American teachers. Then there's another alumni who is an attorney, and he went back to his home country. It's actually Peru, to his home country. And he actually leads the entire they have they have more federally managed conflict management systems there, and he is the president of Peru, named him the head of the conflict management alternative dispute resolution for all of Peru. He is just an attorney in Peru who came to the States and got this degree. So I really think you take the skill set you have, the passion you have, the experience you have, and then we tack this in there and you get to shape what you want to do with it. It's been pretty fun.
I was going to say, I think because it is a relatively new field, there is a lot of open potential, that there's a creativity that can go into what do I want to use this degree for.
I tell people, if this is what I believe. We're young enough. There's a lot of entrepreneurial activity. We're also young enough. There's not a lot of this easy structure to step into an established job, right?
Yeah.
So I tell people, if you don't have the interest in kind of building, doing something kind of functionally build a direction for yourself, this could be a challenge. If, hey, I want to come out of here and I want to sit in front of a desk and do conflict management. At the same time, if you enjoy opportunity and you want to build, I'm an example. It's fairly limitless because I'm shocked about what's out there. Everybody's messed up completely. There's always work. It's like it's a growth industry. In our current political climate, it's like conflict's a growth industry. There's lots of stuff.
Yeah. It is all around us. I was in a situation earlier this week that somebody was rude to me in a store, and I got so fired up, and I just thought, this is my job. I'm supposed to know how to do this, but it does. We have conflicts in our daily lives.
And don't take that too hard.
With our kids.
Painter's house always needs painting, right? That's the story. So it's Recently, I'm really involved in some pretty complex kind of coaching and stuff right now. And somebody said, "Does this bother you that people are so upset?" And I'm like, "No, it's not my stuff. This is great. I go to the office at my place, I don't behave as well." So I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting that we all have to cope with that stuff internally.
Sure. I do think, like you said, in the world we live in, folks seem to be at a higher level of anxiety, or at a higher level
Yeah.
of, like, their feelings are right under the surface.
Yeah, there's
These
no
feelings
margins
of
left.
anger, and that leads to moments of tension, or that people's frustration or fear about other things may come out in the way that they interact with the people around
That
them.
is so true. Our margins of civility have dissipated.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see publicly right now is just the antithesis of where we want to be, right? This dividing up, brave-hearting, taking one thing and making it to a huge issue, which is the antithesis of the skill set of where we're building bridges, we're finding common ground, we're pulling people together. And in the current environment, I see more people who are suspicious of us than in the past when you're saying, we can find a way to talk about this. Like, no, we can't.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think rather than be depressed by that, I see that as opportunity for us to do our work. Because I think if you get to know people, you engage with people, you use the skills that you have naturally and we teach you, you can build bridges in an environment that seems like it's impossible.
Something else that reminded me about is this concept that conflict management is singing kumbaya, holding hands, everybody's going to get along.
100% not that, right?
And I've learned so much about how it is rooted in science and real life skills, because
Sure.
that is a misconception I think we have.
Yeah, and I think I know where it comes from, and I'm not saying that's not okay,
Mhm.
right? I want to be clear. I'm not a talking stick guy. I don't pass stuff around, right? But people do.
It is one.
It is one
part
way.
of
It
the
comes
field.
out of the community mediation model
Mhm.
of listening intentionally, and all
Mhm.
that's important, right? But I think there's a misconception that that's what it is. No, what it is helping people move to a more productive place
Mhm.
and manage difficult relationships. And in some environments, that model's helpful.
Mhm.
But we're all not sitting around, talking about how we feel all the time. Most of my work aligns with my personality, which is not that, right? My work is more structural. So I'm looking at root causes and how do we move stuff forward, and using the principles that we have to push through. I use the word a lot. A lot of conflict is people get stuck in looped behavior. Like they get in a bad spot and they just keep doing the same things over and over, and it makes it worse and worse. And yet they don't know how to get out of it, or they don't trust the people around them for a lot of reasons. And then we give them ways to understand it, to talk about it, and then confront it. I mean, a lot of conflict management is not avoiding conflict, it's leaning into it, is being willing to be in that person who will lean into the difficulty and help people do what has to be done to disrupt patterns of bad behavior. If that is a circle, great. But a lot of times it's not, right? And so I think we do get, also people think conflict management is mediation. I get that one a lot. All they know is a mediation model. So they're like, oh, so you're a mediator. Yeah, I can be, because the tools, you taught mediation. The tools of mediation are helpful everywhere, but not everything's a mediation.
Right. I know one of our professors refers to our program as pracademics, because we are pulling from academic fields as well as teaching real life useful skills. And one of the things I do like about many of our classes is that it provides opportunities for role play, practicing in real time.
So much of it is skill set acquisition. So there are my undergrad degrees in languages, right? I wouldn't call that the most practical degree. That's why I like is that we still, at the master's level, we still delve into the theory behind it, why we do this. That separates it from just training you would get on the weekends or whatever.
Yeah.
You need to know why this works so that you can use that theory to do whatever. But then we make sure they practice it and take that theory and align it to how that works. And that's why almost, if not all of our professors are practicing professionals. They have the graduate degrees, the terminal degrees, they understand the theory, but they're practicing professionals in the field, and they bring that to the room and you engage it. I think that's what's probably most interesting. And by the way, some really interesting studies out there right now, I heard even a couple of days ago, that is what people are looking for at the graduate level. Now, give me something that I can walk out with. And so much of what we do is skill acquisition.
Yep. I've been happy to hear several students who'll say, I tried this example with my kids and it worked.
It works. I tell them conflict management is basically like being a parent sometimes.
Right.
You know, you feel like don't do that, try this. You
I
know,
was
it's
at
fun.
my kids' career fair last year and trying to explain to 7th graders what a conflict management professor did. And this little kid thought a minute and he said, so you're like a babysitter.
It's a tad bit more than that, but I feel that way
I get
sometimes.
it.
I feel that way sometimes, yeah.
Well, for folks who are listening to this and thinking about the way they can use these skills, can you give us an example of something, a set of steps or a practice that they can use in their real life?
Sure. So first of all, like I said, there's some baseline stuff we all ought to know. I wish everybody in the country had to do just like, here's like 5 things you need to think about before you get ridiculous. You know, one of those, let's just talk about engaging somebody who doesn't have your best interest at heart. We all deal with that. I got a neighbor right now, you know, and sometimes I'm like, what do I do with all this? So if you're talking to somebody and they're being confrontational or pushing back, and for a lot of us, we get really uncomfortable and we'll either walk away or we blow up, or a lot of us will just eat it, right?
Yeah.
That's just not really long-term productive. So one of the things I say, if you and I are having an issue, and I feel like it's escalating with you, and I don't know what to do with it, and I'm feeling all this stuff, especially if you and I have had a problem before, right? So it's now a repetitive thing.
Building.
And all these things have built, and you start doing something that makes you uncomfortable. The first thing I need to do is cast a vision of how it could be. I always say start nice with a positive vision. And so if
you can do that on your own.
You don't even, it has nothing
Right.
to do with them. I
Right.
mean, the bottom line is you can say this, and I'm look. I just something like, hey, I actually see this as an opportunity. We could fix this, and this could be looked this way, because people need to know how it could be, and give them every opportunity to see it's something different. That's not being unrealistic, because in all likelihood, you won't buy that. You'd come back at me anyway. Then, if once I've cast a positive vision, I then want to let you know I fully understand and it can articulate back to you what you're saying to me. It's incredibly important for a lot of reasons. But and you don't have to say, here's what I heard you say, because that makes people mad. But just like, it seems like this is what you're saying to me. And you got to do this without any kind of, did I get that right? How do I need to clarify that? I just want to understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
It forces people to evaluate. Then once they go, yeah, that's it, then you very kindly, non-emotionally, non-confrontationally say, I get that. And this is where I think we ought to be. And it may not look like where you are, but at least we understand where you're at. And then set a boundary and not let them just bully you. You don't have to fight with them, do anything. And then if they give in at all, completely forgive their bad behavior before. You don't have to be their best friend, but don't let the fact they were rude. I see this all the time. Well, they were rude to me. I'm like, so what? I mean, at this point, just fix it. Don't worry about that. And if you'll just kind of do be positive, clarify, set a boundary, and be forgiving of bad behavior, it's shocking how much stuff can get better in that way, and that's counterintuitive, right? Most people are like, that's not what I would do. And that's one of those examples that really good conflict managers are counterintuitive. We lean into it.
Yes.
We see it as opportunity. We ask good questions, but we don't just give in, because when a person bullies you, they only want one of 2 things: to make you misbehave or to get their way. And that process right there does neither. Is that making sense? That's one
Yes.
tool
That's
you
great.
could use right now. It'll feel uncomfortable. Write it down. Put it on a piece of card. I don't care. Eventually, you'll get used to it.
Set the
It's a tool.
vision, listen and clarify to what this other person is
Yeah.
expressing. Set your own boundaries in
What
that
you're not
way.
going to give up.
And then I think that last piece is so important, and I forget that sometimes. Be forgiving, not, like you said, not let it all go and say that this was correct,
No.
but move past it in a way that then can be healthy and effective in
I
that
think the
conversation.
number one tool of being successful in conflict management is humility and lack of ego. If you can set your own ego aside and humbly try to be helpful, you can do a lot.
Dean Joyner, thanks so much for being here. It was really good to talk with you and hear some of these stories from you. And I hope that for folks who are listening at home, that you'll follow us and listen to more of our podcasts coming up.
Thanks for having me. I think this field, I mean, the labor statistics said it's a growth field, right? They finally acknowledged it. But I think this field is got a huge growth potential. And by the way, the world we live in now in America, we just need more people who know how to deal with difficult stuff
I do
because
hear
we're not
that.
great at it.